everybody. Welcome to Learning the Scottish Great Highland Bagpipe with me, J.D. Ingram, pipe major of the Charleston Pipe Band. This week we're going to be learning
Lesson 18, Toarluaths. Your goal is to be able to play the Toarluath accurately and also understand how this embellishment fits into music rhythmically. We'll discuss the idea of the plural diversity of embellishments that are out there, including Bubbly Notes, Crunluaths, and many more. We'll look into the first part of Scotland the Brave. Your homework is to practice Toarluath warm-up exercises and continue practicing all music learned so far. Extra resources can be found in Sandy Jones' Beginning the Bagpipe, page 35, or the College of Piping Tutor, part 1, page 45. All right, so this is the last major low-note embellishment. Remember, our low-note embellishments included the D-throw and the grip. The one we are working on today is called the Toarluath. Doesn't really have another name. Everybody calls it the Toarluath. It is played from almost any note to low A, or from B back to B, or from C back to C. If you are playing it from D to low A, the second grace note will be written as a B grace note instead of a D grace note, but we're not going to practice that right yet. You can see it written here at the side. It is played a lot like a grip. You almost always have a G grace note on the note before a Toarluath, and the Toarluath will start before the beat, winding up to the beat with two low G sounds. The two low G sounds will be separated by a D grace note, except, as mentioned before, if you're coming from a D, you will separate the two low G sounds with a B ring finger grace note. And then to finish the movement, you have an E grace note from the second low G up to your following theme note. So you can see it written as it is typically written in notation, and then broken out as it will be expressed with the two low Gs played like real notes, shorthand, winding up to the beat.
All right, this is the last embellishment lesson in the series. Any embellishments beyond this are either seldom enough that I'm not going to bother teaching them because you're probably going to learn them only for one tune, or they are part of probably another series because they're specific to a certain idiom. But for embellishments, this is a low-note embellishment like our grip or lumlua. This is called the Toarluath. The Toarluath is a grip, and as you're coming out of that low G, you're adding an E grace note to it. So from low A to low A. All right. Close, G grace note to separate your second low G sound, or D grace note to separate your second low G sound, and then E grace note on the way out. The other thing that's worth noting is it typically has a high G grace note before the note before the grip, or before the Toarluath. And you can notice that, right? If you have a G, close, D, E, right? G, D, E, grace note pattern. It's on a series of two real notes and two additional shorthand low G sounds, but it follows that G, D, E grace note pattern. So trying it again from low A to low A, and we'll start with a G grace note this time. The other notes that it could be from one note to the same note are B and C. And C. Other than those three examples, all of the Toarluaths I've ever seen written end on low A. So you can go all your top hand notes. And obviously if it's on high G or high A, you're not going to have that lead in high G grace note. It's also worth noting if the note before the Toarluath is a D, they do not have a D grace note written typically. They will have a B grace note written, so it would be. That's weird. Make sure you work on that ring finger moving by itself to strengthen that muscle, because that muscle is not designed to work separate from your pinky. But you can force it to with lots of exercise and good practice habits. So that's our Toarluath. Practice your scales and your Toarluath, low A to low A, B to B, and C to C as well. And then we'll look at it in context of music. Awesome.
The first place we're going to see a Toarluath in context is the very beginning of Scotland the Brave. So let's try out this opening phrase. It's got a Toarluath from the first beat to the second beat, and then it's got some other embellishments that we should already be familiar with.
All right, let's try Toarluath in the context of music. So the first one we're going to learn is the very beginning of Scotland the Brave. Scotland the Brave you've probably heard before. I've certainly seen lots of people, usually inebriated at a bar or something, saying, "Play the bagpipe song." This is the song that they mean. This is the song, one of the most famous songs that's played on the bagpipes. Starts out with E, G grace note to low A, Toarluath. So you can practice that. It finishes with a short B, remember our dots and cuts, then a teragin from C doubling, E grace note to low A, another C doubling, E, high E doubling, strike to high A, grip back to high A, so a nice clean grip, expressed very similar to our Toarluath, and then an E, and then a teragin. So all together. Just that much. It's good practice. Starts with that phrase right there, happens a lot in the tune. So mastering this phrase will prepare you really well for learning Scotland the Brave. Up to speed, it'll go something like. So you can start working towards that goal eventually. Good job.
This is the last embellishment we're going to cover in this series, but there are other embellishments out there, and they might pop up in more advanced music that you learn in the future. So the key to approaching them is to do two things. First, figure out if it's a low note centric movement or a theme note centric movement. Low note centric movements will typically have two or more low Gs or sometimes low As, in which case those tend to be expressed where you hold on to those low Gs or low As more, as play them as real notes, and the other grace notes in the movement are played as grace notes. A lot of times the low note centric movements also wind up to the beat and finish on the beat. If it's a theme note centric movement, so if the note you're going to is shown to be repeated a couple times in the embellishment, at least once, if not two or three times, a lot of times those are theme note centric movements. Those tend to start on the beat, and you will play that theme note as the real notes and all other grace notes as grace notes. And so the second thing is to figure out which grace notes are the real notes and which ones are the grace notes. As mentioned before, if it's a low note centric movement, it's probably the low notes. If it's a theme note centric movement, it's probably the theme note repeated, but this may or may not always be the case. Some examples below, we have the derido, or the bubbly note, is played from D or C to B. It is a low note centric movement. You can tell that because there are three low Gs in it. So it is low G, grace note back to low G with a D grace note there, then a C grace note back to low G, then you open up to B. The next one is called the Pele, or the Shiver, or the Tripling, or sometimes the hornpipe shake. And this is from basically any bottom hand note to basically any bottom hand note. It is a theme note centric movement, so it is grace note to the theme note, a G grace note to the theme note, an E grace note to the theme note, and then a shake to the theme note. You have the Crunluath, which is a low note centric movement. It is typically played with a G grace note on the preceding note, then a close to low G, D grace note back to low G, E grace note to low A, F grace note to low A, open to E. Always ends on E. You have the Eedree, which is always played to E. It is a low note centric movement if it's coming from below E, and it's actually a theme note centric movement if it's coming from above E. This is a weird one. But as written, you can see it low A to E. It would be an E grace note to low A, F grace note to low A, open to E. And the Dari is the same. If it's coming from below F, it's a low note centric, even though it doesn't really have a low note. If it's coming from above F, it's a theme note centric. And so your repeated low note in this case is the E. As written, it's F grace note to E, G grace note to E, open up to F. So that's the embellishments that you see here. We're not going to practice them, but it's worth tossing those in the back of your mind and being prepared to work on them if you see them in context ever. Thanks for joining me again, guys. Some final thoughts for you. Just like the grip, we need 2 low G sounds in our Toarluaths. No more, no less. Our Toarluaths wind up to the beat, so that E grace note on the final note, that's occurring right on the beat for us. Notice the G to E grace note pattern. The G grace note is typically on the preceding note, and we have a D grace note to separate our 2 low Gs, and an E grace note on the final note. And that can help with practicing your idiomatic movements. As always, check out your supplemental material, beginning the bagpipe, page 35, or your College of Piping Tutor, part 1, page 51. Cheers, guys.